Welcome. This is Glasgow Rangers Nation. I am Owen James, and this is all your latest Rangers news, guys. So Big Phil took part in a Q&A with supporters yesterday, where a number of questions are obviously raised. I think obviously the tough questions that we would probably want answers to were avoided, as I'm sure these questions were run past the club first before they were asked, obviously not wanting to put their manager in a difficult position. And I'm sure some of the thoughts, feelings that Big Phil has as regards the transfer window that has just been, the budget that he has had to work with, etc., are opinions that he will keep to himself for now. I'm sure that he airs them behind closed doors with the board, with Niels Koppen, etc., with his coaching staff. I'm sure they are all things that he will discuss. However, he will not obviously want to risk his job. He will not want to speak out against his employers in public, as you know, we all know that is a recipe for getting yourself sacked. Now, the club is in the process of a rebuild. We do know that the standard of the squad we have, the standard, the quality of the squad we have, and the players in the squad are not up to the standards we would expect from Rangers at this point in time. You know, I think there are a number of positions still fundamentally short. I think, central midfield area, fundamentally short. The wide areas, fundamentally short. Out and out, real, genuine goal scoring number 9, massively short. Hamza Igman, we don't know what we've got. Cyril Dessers, gloriously just not good enough and not up to standard in big games. Danilo, injury prone. Right back as well to replace the error-prone James Tavernier. There's a number of different positions we do need to address. Now, it's quite clear the club have moved forward slightly in the whole recruitment process. We saw, didn't we, with the centre-backs, we went for Cordoba, that fell through. We went for Kai, that fell through. We then obviously settled on Cass and Weirjo, or Big Cass, whatever you want to call him. So it's quite clear the football board and, Niels Koppen in particular are moving forward in that aspect, in terms of moving this club forward, with the whole situation with range of targets. There is quite clearly, a hierarchy of targets. They've got target lists. They are working their way through those target lists. That if player A doesn't come off, and we go to B, C, D, etc., and work our way through. Now, one of the things that you'd want to see from a club at this stage is already forward planning. January is just around the corner. I know it's only the 11th of September today, but, we are moving into November, December. The moment we move towards November, December, you do need to start having plans in place for January budgets, players, target lists, etc., etc. That's what big clubs do. You rest assured that the Man Cities, Liverpools, Arsenals, Chelseas, Tottenhams of this world down south will already be doing this, as will the Real Madrid, etc., etc. Now, Big Phil was obviously quizzed about this whole transfer window, about the rebuild, about the budgets, etc., and basically said that, as far as he's aware, he doesn't know how many windows this will take to rebuild this squad, which I suppose when you don't know what your budget is, when you don't know the willingness of players to move to you, is always going to be the big risk, isn't it? I think we all kind of knew that this would be more than a one window job. This is not, it was never, ever going to be all solved pre this start of this season. We knew that this was going to take December, the January window, probably next summer as well, to rebuild this squad. There's players that need to be moved on. You can't clear the entire squad in one go because you can't replace them all in one go. Too much upheaval, just not doable at the end of the day. So there's contracts to sort out, there's deals to sort out, there's wages, there's a whole range of complications when it comes to clearing a squad and rebuilding a squad. Now, Big Phil was obviously asked about the January budget and the windows it would take to rebuild, and this is what he had to say in the Q&A. He says, "I wish I had the answer to that and had a crystal ball. I know a lot of fans and the young ones like to play the PlayStation, Football Manager and all those things, but in real life, it's totally different. You cannot make any prediction about that because at first, it's about the finances you have yourself, and I don't know that yet for January. It's about finding the right players and convincing them to come." Now, Big Phil is right. I think obviously, the board have not planned clearly for January yet. There is no plan there in place. But then again, with the Park family, who are an absolute curse on this club, and John Bennett, who, despite what Dave King says about him working hard, is about as much use as a chocolate teapot. Is it any surprise that things have not already started to be planned for the January transfer window? I think it's, obviously, definitely was never going to happen. The board are not fit for purpose. This board can't even run a bath. We know this board are absolutely useless. So that's a concern. And I think Big Phil's right from one aspect, though. you can find players you want, but if player X doesn't want to come or club Y doesn't want to release player X, then you're stuck. And if you've got a range of targets, say 3-4 targets for the wing position, 3-4 for the 6th position, 3-4 for the number 9 position, and if none of those players want to come or their clubs don't want to sell them because they're still in a relegation dogfight or a race for Europe or a race for the title, then in January, they're not going to let them move on. That's just the way life is. And yes, it isn't as simple, I think, and some fans don't really realize that it's not as simple as PlayStation, as FIFA career mode, is it? You can't just go out and sign who you want and get who you want at any point. It is what it is. He went on to say this: it has to do with relationships with players and agents and other clubs too, if they want to let them go or not. It's impossible to predict that. All I can say is we will do it as fast as possible, but you don't have everything in your own hands. You can only really work hard for that. Now, Big Phil's right, I think, from this aspect. He really is that at the end of the day, you've got to build up a relationship with the players and the other clubs. When you want to bring those players and those players in from those clubs, you want to build up a good working relationship with them and develop a dialogue. There's also a situation when you want to move players on, isn't it? You want to move players on and they don't want to move, or it's the way you sell moves to them, get them out of the club. And we know that there's a number of players at this club at this moment in time in the squad that do need to be moved on. The Dowells, the Tavs, the Lawrences, the Matondos of this world. But, realistically at this point, we're not in a position where we can move them on due to shortness of players, the inability to replace them. And he's right. It is impossible to predict how it's going to go. Yes, in an ideal world, we'll say, right, in January, we want a 6, we want a winger, we want to send a forward, and we want a right back. We'll sell Tav, Dowell, Lawrence, and Matondo, and we'll bring 4 in. That's the ideal world. But in the ideal world, it doesn't happen, does it? Because we don't live in the ideal world. It isn't as simple as all that. That's just life. You don't get the fees you want for the players, or the players don't want to move to the clubs you've agreed fees with. The players you want to sign to replace them don't want to come, or they do want to come, but then their wage demands are too high, or the transfer fee demanded by the other club is completely ridiculous. Because as we know, January is a seller's market, not a buyer's market. Now, it's reassuring that he's saying we're going to do this as fast as possible, but realistically, he can't put, a time on it. There has to be an element of patience with this. There does have to be an element of patience with this. And, whilst obviously we, on that last day, we clearly did move 4 players, we did clearly move to bring in players. I think there was obviously, the deal for, I think, the 6th from the German team. There was the deal for Edozie. All those fell through for whatever reason. We did obviously get Cass and Bayrami, but we didn't obviously get all the players we wanted. And I think Big Phil is slightly frustrated by that. But, it is what it is in terms of where we are as a club at the moment. And it's just frustrating that, that Big Phil is clearly struggling to organise the club the way he wants, to get what he wants, because I think there is a lack of backing there by the board. A lack of backing there from John Bennett, from Dave King, from the Park family. But it's worrying as well. And I think, the fan base, perhaps we need to start to, be elements of patience in this, and then acceptance that this season we're going to really struggle to win anything. And that's just where it is. But for Rangers fans, that's difficult to accept, because as a club, we need to be competing on a regular basis with our city neighbours. And the fact that they could overtake us this year in terms of trophies won, is just absolutely horrific. And it's not something we want to think about, is it? But it's where we are at this moment in time. But certainly, interesting response from Big Phil. Guys, let me know what you think. And on the way out, please, obviously, smash that like. Drop me a comment. All help the video to grow. And remember always, we are the people.